welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to crochet this super cute matching lounge set. So for this tutorial, you're going to need a few different colors of yarn. Of course, you could do this in just one color, but I will be using this tan beige color in various shades of pink and orange. You're also going to need some type of closure for your top. So I'm choosing to use buttons. You're also going to need a crochet hook. This is a 5.5 millimeter hook, a pair of scissors, and a tape measure. You will also need 2 stitch markers and a tapestry needle. So first things first, you're going to need your bust measurement. My bust is a 34. But we're going to make a chain that is 1.5 inches less than our bust measurement. So I'm going to chain until I get to 32.5 inches. So once you have your chain, you want to make sure that when wrapped around, it meets right at the front of your bust, like it's about to overlap, kind of. So after you have your chain, we are going to chain one more. We're going to place a double crochet in the second stitch from the chain. Now we're going to double crochet all the way down the length of the chain. So once you reach the end, you want to chain one, change colors, chain one, and turn your work. If you're not changing colors, you can simply just chain 2 and turn your work. So now we're going to place 1 double crochet into every space all the way down the length of the chain. And again, when we get to the end, we're going to chain 1, add our color, chain 1, and turn our work. And we're going to do this until we make a panel that is the length of our torso, covering our chest. It should be a panel that covers as much of your torso as you would like. So I'm gonna meet you guys back when I have the length that I desire. So as you can see, and it's probably the case for you, our chain, our panel has gotten super long. And this is why we did 1.5 inches less than our actual bust measurement, because I knew that as we started to crochet, it would get longer than our bust, or a little bit longer, or if you did enough inches off, it will get right to your actual bust measurement. So I'm going to show you how to do the next row, the third row of this. So what we're going to do is start to skip this first stitch, and what that's going to do is keep our panel in a straight line along the edging. When you get to the end, you're still going to put a double crochet in this last stitch, but again, when you turn your work, we're going to skip this first space and go into this second space. You don't have to skip this space for every single row, but it is helpful to keep your project in alignment. Otherwise, it will be similar to placing an increase on the end of both rows, which eventually will give you a panel that starts to get wider as you go down. So it will just continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So skipping this space acts as a decrease in a sense. But like I said, you don't have to skip the space for every row. If you see that your project is starting to get bigger as you work down, you can definitely start to skip this space on the edges. So keep working until you get a panel, again, that is as long as you desire, and I will meet you guys back when I'm done. So once you have reached your desired length, I did mine until about 11 inches. You're going to go ahead and cut your tail at the end, leaving it long enough so that we can weave in our ends. So as you can see, we now have a top that will meet in the middle, and you can choose to have this part to be the front or the back. regardless, it's time for us to weave in our ends. So what I'm going to do is just take my ends as they are, and you can use a tapestry needle or your crochet hook, and I just like to weave them through the back loops of the project so that you can't see them from the front. And then I'll eventually take one apart from the other and create a double knot or a triple knot, making sure not to pull too tight as to mess up the edging. And then you can just cut your tail and leave it at that. And so I'm going to repeat this process on both sides until all of my ends are concealed. So now that we have our ends all tied and concealed, this is now going to be the inside of our garment. So this is the part that we're not going to see, and this is how our top is looking so far. So I've left a few of the tails out because I'm going to use them to weave in my ends for this next step. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my beige color, just because it's the same color as my first and last row, and I'm going to do a single crochet across the edging of this seam just to clean it up a little bit. This part is completely optional, or you could do a half double crochet or a double crochet, but I just want to put a stitch down so that it conceals these edges. So this is my last stitch. I'm going to chain one and cut a long enough tail to weave in. And you can see the difference from doing that stitch and not having that stitch. So now again, you just want to take your tail ends and weave them into the back side of your garment. And then I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other side and meet you guys back for the next step. Next, you want to go ahead and try your top on. So I wrapped my top around myself and made it overlap just a little bit because I know that's how I want my buttons to go. And so then I found the parts on my top where I want my straps to start, and I put 2 bobby pins in there as stitch markers. So you want to put your top on and find where you want your straps to start and mark those 2 stitches with stitch markers or bobby pins. So now I'm going to go ahead and remove one of the bobby pins and insert my hook into that top stitch. And I'm going to go ahead and chain up 1. So now what you want to do is make a chain long enough to wrap around your shoulders and through to the back comfortably. So you want to make a chain that's not too short or too long, but one that makes a strap that sits comfortably around your shoulders. So basically all I did was I made a chain at first and I put my top back on and tried to see if it could reach to the back of my shoulders. And so I made a chain of 50, and that is about enough for me. So now what I'm going to do at the end of my chain is chain 1 more, and then I'm going to place a double crochet into the second loop from the chain, and then I'm just going to double crochet all the way down the length until I get back to the beginning. And once you get back to the base of your chain, I'm going to go ahead and pull my starting yarn and then place a slip stitch, chain 1 into the base, and cut my yarn. Then what I'm going to do, of course, is weave in these ends. And now what I'm going to do is find the point directly behind where I started. It's about here. And I'm going to sew my strap down. So I'm going to do that by taking a tapestry needle. You could also do this with a very small crochet hook. And I'm going to take a little bit of yarn. You really don't need much. And make a small knot at the top. And what I'm going to do is literally in between the stitches, just sew it down. And I'm gonna leave a tail that I can weave in later, but we're going to secure our strap down this way. I'm going to loop it through and create a knot. So once my strap is tied down with no loops, it's one seamless strap. Again, I'm going to tie my ends together, cut them off, and repeat this on the other side, making a chain that is the exact same length as this one, so I have similar straps. Now that I have my straps attached, I'm going to go ahead and steam block my project, only because I'm using acrylic yarn. Again, this is optional, you do not have to do this step, but I will be back for the last step of this top once I have finished steam blocking. So now it is time to add our buttons, and I'm going to do this a bit differently. So what I'm going to do first is place my buttons down, and then I'm going to sew them on to just this first panel of the top. Again, my tapestry needle and some yarn. You could also use sewing thread and just sew through the stitches, but I'm gonna lay them down with yarn. And I'm simply going to sew as if I were sewing buttons on anything else, making a knot first at the top of my tapestry needle. And I'm going to go from underneath, making sure I'm only doing this first panel. And I'm going to sew up through the eye of the button, leaving a tail and sewing back down. And I'm going to do that twice. So once my button is secure, I'm going to cut a short tail, flip my project to the back side, and again, tie a few knots to ensure that our button stays on. I'm going to cut our work, and I'm going to do that with all of my buttons on the top. So I now have my buttons on, and I'm going to make the loops that are going to catch onto my buttons to close the top. The reason why I'm doing this is because I found out that my buttons could not fit through my stitches, so instead I had to sew them on top and create a stitch that will catch the buttons to fully close the top. If your buttons can go through your stitches, I would recommend that you simply crochet them onto the back panel so that when you put them through your stitches, they show to the front. But this is just how we're going to do it for the sake of needing an alternative. So what I'm going to do is take a 3.75 millimeter hook. This is very, very small. So what I'm going to do is find a space that is close to where the two panels meet. So for me, I'm gonna do about here. And I'm going to crochet a chain long enough to loop around my button. I'm gonna do 17. And so now what I'm going to do is cut my work. I'm going to feed my tail back through where I started, so that's to the back, and the same with this starting one. But I'm gonna make sure I go through a stitch so that the loop doesn't come out. And now both tails are to the back, and you just want to knot them together. So now we have our first loop closure for our button. So you just want to repeat this until you've done it for all your buttons. When securing your loops, it's good to find a stitch that's not necessarily the stitch that you entered into, but maybe one that's a bit adjacent to it. So I'm gonna go over here to pull my tail to the back, and I'm going to take my second tail, and I'm not gonna put it in exactly the same stitch, but I'm gonna put it about here near the same stitch. And then when it's time to tie them together in the back, I'm going to take one of the loops and pull them a little bit farther from where we started. So that way, when I tie my ends together, the knot doesn't come through the hole. But since this hole is a little bit big and I can already see that it will try to slip, I'm also going to find a different stitch. I'm going to go into this one and pull my tail to this stitch. So then, keeping the tension on this one so that it doesn't come through, I'm going to go ahead and tie these into a knot. So now when I cut, and you see how you kind of have this tail, regardless of how you pull, that tail won't come through to the front. And so it's all good and it's secure. And now we can secure our top with our buttons and our button loops. How cute is this? And this is the first piece of our matching set. So next we're going to start our shorts. I have a 5.5 millimeter hook, the same one as we made our top with. And please forgive the lighting and any background noise. It is currently raining, so yeah. But we're going to start by making a slip knot and making a chain of 8. So once we have our chain of 8, I'm going to skip this first space and go into the second space from the chain and do a half double crochet. And then I'm going to half double crochet down the length of the chain, where you should have 7 in total. So once you have your last half double crochet, we're going to chain 1, turn our work, and we are going to work into these back loops only, placing 1 half double crochet in every back loop down the length of the row. And again, when we reach the end, we're going to chain 1, turn our work, and again work into the back loops of the row. And you're going to do this until you reach a measurement that sits comfortably wherever you want your shorts to sit. That could be your waist or your low waist. It could be wherever you want these shorts to sit. You're going to make this waistband about 1 inch less than that measurement. So I'll meet you guys back when I'm done. So once your waistband is complete, I'm going to put 2 ends together by making a slip knot, chain 1, And now I'm just going to go into the V's on this side and on this side and simply create a slip knot, sewing the two sides together. And once you reach the end, I'm just going to chain 1 and cut my work. And this is our waistband. This is the inside where we made our seam, and this part is the outside. So now what I'm going to do is find the middle. This is now the middle of my waistband, and this is the exact middle when folded in half. And I'm going to take my pink and I'm going to add my color right here to the middle and chain 1. Now what you want to do is into every open space that you can find across the waistband is just make a half double crochet. And this is going to be the foundation of our shorts. You want to make sure not to put your stitches too close or too far apart, but just do a pretty equal distance between each stitch. And I'll meet you guys back once I'm at the beginning again. So I am now back at the beginning, and I'm going to slip stitch into the top of my chain 2, and turn my work. So this is what it should look like so far. And now you want to find the exact middle point again and make sure that your waistband is even on both sides. So make sure you have an even amount of space from your middle on both sides. We're going to take our stitch markers again, and we are going to place them on the exact ends of our waistband. So these 2 middle points, you want to put stitch markers there. So I've chained 2 and turned my work. You want to make sure you turn your work after every row. And I'm going to place an increase right here. So placing a stitch right next to your chain 2 acts like an increase. And now I'm just going to place 1 double crochet in every space all the way around until I reach my stitch marker. Once you reach your stitch marker, we're going to place 2 double crochets in that one space. And I'm going to remove my stitch marker and place it into the second double crochet that I did. And now we're just going to do 1 double crochet in every space until we reach our second stitch marker, and then we're going to repeat the same process of putting 2 stitches in that marked stitch. So once you reach the end, you're going to slip stitch into the top of your chain 2. We're going to chain 2 again and turn our work. So this is now row 1 of our project. This first row we don't count as row 1. This one is row 1. So now, and like I said, make sure you turn your work after every row. That's going to keep the seam going down the middle of your shorts straight. So now we're going to again place a double crochet in that first stitch, acting like an increase. And we're going to work 1 double crochet all the way around. But when we meet our stitch marker, we're not going to place 2 double crochets. We're only going to place 1. So just do 1 double crochet in every space all the way around. So again, once you reach the end, we are going to slip stitch into the top of our chain 2 again, and turn our work. So now we are going to repeat this pattern for a total of 10 rows. So in the next row, we're going to do our increase in our first stitch, and then we're just going to place 1 double crochet all the way around until we reach our stitch marker, where we will place 2 double crochets, and same thing on the other side. When we get to the end again, turn our work, and then we're going to do a row of just 1 double crochet all the way around, plus our increased stitch. In every row, we're going to place our increased stitch for this part of the pattern. So we're going to repeat this for a total of 10 rows, counting our first double crochet row as row 1. Technically, counting this foundation row right here, at the end we will have 11 rows in total. But you want to repeat this pattern of alternation of increase, no increase, increase, no increase for 10 rows total. This is the last stitch of my 10th row. I'm going to go ahead and chain 2. And this is what your shorts should be looking like so far. So as you can see, after I've done my rows of increases, my shorts are now getting wider so that they can fit my hips. At the end of your 10 rows of increasing and no increasing, the bottom length of your shorts should be half of your total hip measurement. If that is not the case, you're going to continue doing rows of increase and no increase until this measurement is half of your hip measurement. So now I am also at the measurement where I would like my short to be before I begin separating them into opposite legs. For me, that length is about 6 to 7 inches to keep my shorts low-waisted. But if that's not the case for you, you can go around doing just rows of 1 double crochet in every space until this measurement is as long as you desire before you split your shorts into legs. Next is to split the shorts down the middle by creating a seam. So I already have a chain of 2, and I'm going to make a chain of about 16 for the space in between my legs. So since I already have 2, I'm just going to chain 14 more. So now what you want to do is count the total number of stitches all the way around and divide that number in half. So I have exactly 100 stitches all the way around, and I've put a stitch marker in stitch number 50. So what I'm going to do is place a slip stitch from my chain into stitch number 50 and chain 1. Now what you can do is try the shorts on to make sure that this chain length is enough space for you. If not, you can make the chain shorter or longer. Our next step is to crochet the legs. So what we're going to do is simply place 1 double crochet in every space all the way around until we get to the chain that we use to make the bridge between the 2 legs. So once you get to the bridge, we're just going to place a double crochet into every stitch, but you want to use about half of the stitch because we're also going to place a double crochet on the other side for the next side of the shorts. So essentially I'm just going into the top loop of the V, leaving the rest of the stitch on this side so that I can place my stitches on the other side. And as usual, we're just going to slip stitch into the top of our chain 2, chain 2 again, turn our work, and place 1 double crochet into every space all the way around. And you're going to do this until your legs get long enough for you. So at the end of this row, I'm going to chain 1 and cut my work. And now I'm going to do 2 rows of this beige. So I've done 3 rows on my shorts in the pink, and then I'm going to do 2 and the beige. So I'm going to do a total of 5 rows on my shorts. So same pattern, just a different color, of doing 1 double crochet all the way around. For my last row, I'm just going to do half double crochet. 1 row of half double crochet to give it kind of like a cuffed look, just like a finishing edge. And now at the end of this row, I can just chain 1 and cut my work. And what I'm going to do is take my tail and bring it to the back of my project so that I can weave it in. And now you have 1 leg of your shorts complete. And we're going to repeat the same thing on the other side. To do the other side, you're just going to add in your yarn and leave a tail to weave it in later. Chain 2 and simply double crochet. So this is the bridge of the shorts, and as I mentioned earlier, you're just going to double crochet on the other side of that chain. And then repeat your rows of double crochets until you're done. So our shorts are now complete, and it is time for the last step of this project, which is to create a drawstring for our shorts. So I'm just going to make a chain that is long enough when doubled over to go onto my shorts and then past it a little bit. So once we have our chain, as you can see, once doubled over, it goes across my waist, plus there's this much tail left, which is how much will be used for our drawstring. So what I'm going to do is find the center middle of my shorts and pull my drawstring through. Then I'm simply going to just weave the string in and out of the waistband until I meet this first tail again. And now this is the last stitch of the waistband, and you just want to pull your strings so that they are the same length. And as you can see, once pulled, it does start to cinch in the waist. I'm going to go ahead and make a small bow. And yeah, the last step now is to weave in any ends. I've already done some of them, like the ones that were at the top. So you just want to weave in your ends, and I'll show you the final product. So that is it for today's video. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. Also, leave your video recommendations down below. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Pinterest at Sean Cameron, and shop my Etsy at Noble Treasures for sets like this and more. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video.